The Lost Colony of Roanoke. Dreams across the sea. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine England in the year 1584. The air smells faintly of wood smoke and sea salt. The streets of London are narrow, crowded, and noisy with the sounds of merchants, carriages, and church bells. The reign of Queen Elizabeth I is at its height, and across the kingdom there is a restless energy. Plays are being written, poems are being recited, and above all, ships are being built. England is alive with dreams, dreams of the sea, of distant lands, of fortunes waiting to be claimed. The mighty Spanish Empire has already carved out an enormous presence in the Americas, bringing home gold, silver, and tales of strange new worlds. But the English, ambitious and proud, do not wish to remain on the sidelines. They too long for glory, wealth, and a permanent mark on history. It is here, in this restless age, that the story of Roanoke begins. The Elizabethan Golden Age. Queen Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VIII, sits on the throne. She is strong, determined, and clever. Under her rule, England is transforming into a rising power. Writers like William Shakespeare are giving birth to plays that will echo for centuries. Explorers like Francis Drake are challenging the might of Spain, stealing treasure and circumnavigating the globe. But with glory also comes rivalry. Spain, ruled by King Philip II, dominates the seas. Spanish ships carry treasure from the New World back to Europe, and their empire stretches across continents. For England to rise, it must challenge Spain not only on the battlefield, but also in the world of exploration and colonization. Elizabeth knows this, and so do her courtiers. Among them is a bold, ambitious man named Sir Walter Raleigh. Sir Walter Raleigh and the vision of a colony. Raleigh is charming, intelligent, and determined to leave his mark. He dreams of founding a colony across the Atlantic, a permanent settlement that would secure England's claim to the New World. A colony would mean more than land and wealth. It would mean a foothold in the Americas, a base for future trade, and a blow against Spanish dominance. In 1584, Raleigh is granted a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth. The charter is essentially a contract. If Raleigh can establish a colony within 7 years, he and his heirs will hold the rights to it. If he fails, the opportunity will be lost. The stakes are high. Success would bring unimaginable glory. Failure would mean disgrace. So Raleigh begins to plan the first voyages of exploration. Raleigh does not travel to the New World himself. Instead, he sends trusted captains and explorers to scout potential locations. In 1584, 2 captains, Philip Amadas and Arthur Barlow, sail across the Atlantic. Their journey is long, the sea rough and uncertain, but eventually they reach the coast of what is now North Carolina. There, they find an island, lush, green, and surrounded by calm waters. They call it Roanoke Island. The island lies within the territory of the powerful Algonquian-speaking peoples. Amadas and Barlow are cautious but curious. They meet members of the CROATOAN tribe, who treat them with a degree of friendliness. The English are impressed by the land's beauty, the forests, the rivers, the fertile soil. When they return to England, they paint a glowing picture for Raleigh and the Queen. They describe Roanoke as a paradise, a place where crops will grow easily, where a colony can thrive. Their words stir excitement. Elizabeth herself names the entire region Virginia, in honor of her own title as the Virgin Queen. It is decided. Roanoke will be the site of England's first colony. The first settlement, 1585. The dream, however, is always easier than the reality. In 1585, Raleigh sends the first group of settlers to Roanoke. About 100 men make the journey, led by Sir Richard Grenville and Ralph Lane. The voyage is hard, the sea is unforgiving, and supplies run low. But eventually, they land on Roanoke Island. They build a small fort, establish a camp, and begin the work of survival. At first, things seem promising. They trade with the local tribes who provide food. They explore the surrounding land and waters. But as weeks turn into months, the difficulties grow clearer. The soil is not as rich as they had hoped. The climate is harsher. The settlers depend heavily on the native people for food, and tensions begin to rise. Misunderstandings lead to conflicts. A single theft or insult sparks anger. Soon, the relationship with the tribes grows dangerous. Hunger begins to gnaw at the settlers. Tempers rise. The dream of an easy life in paradise quickly fades. By 1586, the settlers are desperate. When Sir Francis Drake, fresh from raiding the Spanish, arrives with his fleet, the colonists beg to leave. Most of them abandon the settlement and sail back to England. The first attempt at colonization has failed. A second attempt. But Sir Walter Raleigh does not give up. Failure, he knows, is part of great ventures. The Spanish had also faced struggles in their early colonies, and yet they had triumphed. England must not abandon the dream. Plans are drawn again. This time, Raleigh wants something different. The first colony was made up almost entirely of men, soldiers, adventurers, explorers. What was missing was the heart of a true community. Families. If a colony is to survive, it must not simply be an outpost. It must be a home. So in 1587, a new group of settlers is gathered. This group includes not only men, but also women and children. Families willing to risk everything for the chance of a new beginning. Their leader will be John White, an artist and mapmaker chosen for his experience and his vision. And so, with hearts full of hope and ships full of supplies, they set sail once more for Roanoke. Closing of Part 1. The first dream of Roanoke has ended in hunger and abandonment. But a second, more ambitious dream is about to begin. The year is 1587. Families leave behind their homes in England, carrying children, carrying hope, carrying faith that across the endless sea lies a better future. What none of them can know is that their story will end not in triumph, but in silence, and that centuries later we will still whisper about the lost colony of Roanoke. The families arrive. The year was 1587. Across the grey waters of the Atlantic, 3 English ships sailed steadily westward. The Lion, the Roebuck, and the Flyboat carried with them not soldiers or adventurers, but men, women, and children. For the first time in English history, entire families had set sail with the hope of building a permanent home in the New World. This new colony was not meant to be temporary. It was not just a fort or a trading post. It was a community, an English town across the ocean, a seed of England planted in foreign soil. At the head of this venture was John White, a thoughtful man, skilled in drawing maps and painting the landscapes he saw. White had travelled to the New World before. He knew its dangers, but also its beauty. His task now was not just to survive, but to guide families into turning wilderness into a home. The voyage across the Atlantic. The journey was long and grueling. The Atlantic Ocean was vast, unpredictable, and filled with storms. Waves the size of houses rose against the wooden ships. The settlers lived in cramped quarters, seasick and weary. Rats scurried in the dark corners of the hold, and food supplies grew stale with each passing week. Yet hope sustained them. These men and women dreamed of land where they could farm freely, where their children could grow without fear of hunger or poverty. For them, England had grown too crowded, too rigid. Across the ocean lay opportunity, at least so they believed. Among the settlers was Eleanor White Dare, the daughter of John White. She was young, newly married, and pregnant. Her husband, Ananias Dare, stood by her side, steady and hopeful. Their child, yet unborn, would become a symbol of the colony's fate. Landing at Roanoke. By midsummer, the ships reached the coast of North America. But when the settlers disembarked, they discovered something unsettling. The plan had been to establish a colony in Chesapeake Bay, a location believed to be more fertile and safer than Roanoke. But for reasons still debated, perhaps due to disagreements with the ship's pilot, perhaps due to weather, perhaps due to haste, they ended up once again on Roanoke Island. The island was familiar to John White, but it was also haunted by failure. This was the same place where the first colony had collapsed only a year before. Still, there was little choice. The settlers began repairing the old fort, clearing land, and building homes from timber. The sound of axes echoed through the forests. Smoke rose from campfires. Children played along the shoreline. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the dream might finally take root. The birth of Virginia. Dare. On August 18, 1587, history was made. Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter, gave birth to a baby girl. The colony rejoiced, for this child represented hope. She was the first English child born in the New World. Her name was Virginia Dare, named after the new land itself. For the settlers, her cries were the sound of a new beginning. To them, it was proof that England had truly arrived on American soil. But hope, fragile as it was, soon collided with harsh reality. Struggles with the natives. The settlers needed help. Their supplies were already running low, and the soil of Roanoke was not easy to farm. They turned to the local tribes for assistance. Some groups, like the CROATOAN, were friendly and willing to trade, but others remembered the earlier English settlers who had brought conflict and bloodshed. One such tribe was the CROATOAN. Suspicion and resentment lingered. When misunderstandings flared, the settlers found themselves isolated and vulnerable. Food shortages became severe. The settlers feared both hunger and hostility. Every night, they wondered if arrows might rain upon their small fort. John White saw the desperation. He knew the colony could not last without fresh supplies from England, and so, though it broke his heart, he made a decision. John White's return to England. In late 1587, John White prepared to sail back to England. His mission, to gather reinforcements and supplies, and then return quickly to Roanoke. The colonists watched with mixed emotions. They trusted him, but they also feared what might happen in his absence. Eleanor, his daughter, wept as he left, holding her infant Virginia Dare. White promised he would return soon, but fate had other plans. War with Spain. When John White reached England, he found his country in chaos. Spain, furious at English raids and piracy, was preparing to invade. The Spanish Armada threatened England's very survival. Queen Elizabeth demanded that every available ship be used for defense. John White pleaded for a vessel to carry him back to Roanoke, but the Navy could spare none. His mission was delayed again and again. Years passed. The colony he had left behind grew ever more distant. By the time John White finally secured passage back to Roanoke, it was 1590, 3 years after he had left. The fateful return. In August of 1590, John White at last stepped onto the sands of Roanoke Island again. His heart pounded with both dread and hope. Would his daughter still be alive? Would he hear the laughter of little Virginia Dare? Would the colony have survived? What he found was silence. The fort stood empty. The houses were deserted. Grass and weeds had overtaken the once cleared land. No settlers greeted him. No voices rose from the forest. The colony had vanished. The only clue was a single word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. No bodies were found, no signs of struggle or war. Only that one word, mysterious, haunting. John White searched desperately, but storms and dwindling supplies forced him to leave. He returned to England with no answers, only questions. The colony, the men, the women, the children, even his own daughter and grandchild, was gone. Closing of Part 2. The story of Roanoke had taken a darker turn. What began as a hopeful settlement of families had ended in disappearance. The first English child born in the New World had vanished into legend. From this point forward, the tale of Roanoke would no longer be about survival or farming. It would become a mystery, one that has endured for over 400 years. And so, the lost colony entered history, leaving behind only silence and a single word: CROATOAN. Theories and shadows. When John White left Roanoke in 1587, he expected to be gone for only a few months. When he returned 3 years later in 1590, he found nothing but silence. No fires burned in the hearths. No footsteps echoed in the sand. The colony, men, women, and children alike, was gone. The only clue, carved roughly into wood, was a single word: CROATOAN. For centuries, that word has hung in the air like smoke. What did it mean? Was it a direction, a clue, a desperate final message? Historians, archaeologists, and storytellers have debated ever since. Let us walk slowly through the leading theories. Theory 1. The CROATOAN tribe. The most obvious explanation is also the simplest. CROATOAN was the name of a friendly tribe who lived on Hatteras Island, not far from Roanoke. Perhaps the settlers, short of food and fearful of enemies, abandoned their fragile colony and went to live with the CROATOAN people. This theory fits with John White's instructions. Before leaving, he told the settlers that if they ever had to move, they should carve the name of their destination. They had done just that. But when White tried to sail to Hatteras Island, a violent storm forced his ships back out to sea. He never returned. If the settlers did join the CROATOAN tribe, then their story may have ended not in tragedy, but in assimilation. Generations later, some explorers reported seeing Native Americans with grey eyes or European features. Could these have been the descendants of Roanoke? We may never know. Theory 2. Attack by hostile tribes. Another theory is darker. Some historians believe the settlers may have been attacked by hostile tribes who remembered the earlier English colonists with bitterness. The CROATOAN people, for example, had clashed violently with Ralph Lane's men in 1586. If war came, it would have been swift and final. The settlers, few in number and poorly supplied, would have stood little chance. Yet John White found no bones, no burned houses, no battlefield remains. Could an entire village be destroyed without a trace? The silence itself is strange. Theory 3. Spanish sabotage. At the time, Spain was England's greatest rival. Spanish soldiers had forts in Florida and ships patrolling the Atlantic coast. It is possible that the Spanish discovered and destroyed the colony to prevent England from gaining a foothold. But again, there is no physical evidence. No Spanish records describe such a raid. Would Spain have erased every man, woman, and child without leaving even a rumor behind? Theory 4. Starvation and dispersal. Perhaps the simplest answer lies in hunger. The land around Roanoke was difficult to farm. Supplies from England never came. It is possible the settlers slowly starved, forcing them to break apart into small groups. Some may have died in the wilderness, while others may have sought refuge with neighbouring tribes. If this happened, the colony did not vanish in one dramatic event, but faded away slowly, painfully, step by step. Theory 5. The lost message. The word CROATOAN may not have been a destination at all. Some scholars suggest it was an incomplete message. Perhaps the colonists were interrupted while carving, or perhaps they intended to write more, but never had the chance. Others note that CROATOAN appeared in later folklore as a word associated with death, disappearance, or the supernatural. In fact, centuries later the word CROATOAN was reportedly found written in the journals of Edgar Allan Poe shortly before his mysterious death. Coincidence or curse? Echoes in the wilderness. Over the centuries, explorers and settlers claimed to see strange signs of Roanoke's people. A few claimed they met native tribes who spoke fragments of English or who practiced Christian prayers. Others swore they saw fair-skinned children among the tribes. But none of these reports were ever proven. They were whispers, rumours, fragments of a fading memory. The mystery deepened as decades passed. Roanoke was abandoned as a site for colonisation. Instead, the English turned north and founded Jamestown in 1607. Jamestown would succeed, but Roanoke would remain a ghost story. Theories in the modern age today, archaeologists continue to dig in the sands of Roanoke and Hatteras. In 2012, researchers revealed a startling discovery. Beneath a patch on John White's original map was a hidden drawing of a fort located inland from Roanoke. Some believe this fort may have been the true destination of the colonists. Excavations at the site have found fragments of English pottery, suggesting some of the colonists may have moved there. Still, no final proof has ever surfaced. No graves, no documents, no letters carried across the sea. The fate of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America, remains unknown. Did she grow up among the CROATOAN? Did she perish in the forest? Did her name fade into legend? The haunting power of mystery. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Roanoke is not what we know, but what we do not know. Most colonies leave behind ruins, bones, or records. Roanoke left behind only a word, carved into wood, and then silence. That silence is what captures the imagination. It is a blank canvas upon which every generation paints its fears and hopes. To some, Roanoke is a story of tragedy. To others, it is a tale of resilience, of settlers who may have survived by joining the native peoples. And to many, it is a reminder that history does not always give us answers. Sometimes, the past leaves only questions. Closing of Part 3. The Lost Colony of Roanoke became more than history. It became legend. Its disappearance inspired stories, poems, and folklore for centuries. It is a riddle that refuses to be solved, a whisper across time. When you walk along the Carolina coast today, with the waves crashing and the forests thick with shadows, you can almost hear it. The echo of voices, the laughter of children, the swing of axes in the trees. And then, silence. The story is not over yet. Because while Roanoke was lost, the English dream of a colony in America was not. In the next part, we turn to Jamestown, the colony that succeeded where Roanoke failed. From ruins to Jamestown. The lost colony of Roanoke had faded into silence, but the dream of an English settlement in the New World did not die. England still hungered for wealth, territory, and the glory of a new empire. While Roanoke had failed, it had also offered lessons. The dangers of isolation, hunger, and hostile encounters were now painfully clear. By 1606, nearly 2 decades after the first Roanoke settlers had disappeared, the English crown organized a new venture. This time, they intended a colony that would not vanish without a trace. A colony that would endure. A new charter. A new plan. King James I granted a royal charter to the Virginia Company of London, a group of wealthy investors who would fund the expedition. Unlike Sir Walter Raleigh's personal venture, this colony was backed by a corporation, with business, politics, and the crown intertwined. The plan was ambitious: send men, women, and supplies to establish a permanent settlement on the Chesapeake Bay. The lessons from Roanoke were never far from their minds. The settlers would be better prepared, more organized, and hopefully more resilient. The voyage to the New World. In December 1606, 3 ships, the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery, set sail from England. On board were 104 men and boys, carrying tools, weapons, seeds, livestock, and hope. The journey was long and difficult. Storms battered the ships. Scurvy and seasickness took their toll. Many grew weak from hunger and poor hygiene. Yet, the thought of a new life across the ocean kept spirits alive. Among them was Captain John Smith, a man whose courage and leadership would soon become legendary. Unlike the Roanoke settlers, Smith had military experience, and he understood the need for discipline and practical skills. Arrival and early struggles. In April 1607, the ships finally reached the coast of present-day Virginia. The land was dense with forests and rivers. The climate was humid and hot, a stark contrast to the cooler English countryside. The settlers named their new home Jamestown in honor of King James I. From the beginning, survival was a struggle. Freshwater sources were difficult to find. Disease spread quickly. Many settlers had no experience farming, and the soil along the river was marshy and full of mosquitoes. Yet Jamestown benefited from a crucial advantage. It was not entirely isolated. Unlike Roanoke, the settlers quickly established trade and alliances with local native tribes, especially the Powhatan Confederacy. Food, guidance, and knowledge from the natives became vital for the colony's survival. Lessons learned from Roanoke. The failure of Roanoke had left a mark on England's colonization strategy. Investors, leaders, and settlers were now cautious. Supplies. Jamestown brought enough tools, food, and livestock to withstand early hardships. Leadership. Experienced captains like John Smith provided order and discipline. Alliances. Early diplomacy with the Powhatan tribes helped prevent immediate conflict. Planning. Settlers were trained to farm, hunt, and build, unlike Roanoke's mostly unprepared adventurers. These measures did not guarantee success, but they increased the odds. The harsh realities. Despite preparation, life in Jamestown was brutal. The first few years became known as the starving time. Food shortages were severe. Corn, hunted meat, and imported supplies often ran out. Disease, including malaria, spread from the swampy environment. Conflicts with nearby tribes occasionally erupted, though they were less catastrophic than at Roanoke. Yet the colony endured, thanks largely to John Smith's leadership. His strict rules, willingness to work alongside settlers, and understanding of the land kept Jamestown alive when many would have perished. The long-term survival. By 1610, Jamestown was still fragile, but it had survived where Roanoke had vanished. The arrival of new supplies and settlers from England helped stabilize the colony. Over time, tobacco cultivation became a profitable enterprise, transforming Jamestown into a sustainable settlement. Jamestown's endurance was proof that the dream of colonization could succeed, but only through careful planning, strong leadership, and learning from past failures. Roanoke's shadow lingered, reminding settlers that the new world could be beautiful and deadly. Roanoke's ghost in Jamestown. Even as Jamestown thrived, stories of Roanoke were never forgotten. Settlers spoke of a lost colony somewhere along the coast, a village that had vanished into the forests. Some speculated that survivors of Roanoke had joined local tribes, and perhaps their descendants now lived among the Powhatan people. The tale of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World, became legend. Her fate remained unknown, and the word CROATOAN continued to haunt the imagination of generations. Roanoke was gone, but its story shaped the future. Jamestown's survival and later English colonies were built on lessons learned from failure. Roanoke taught the world that hope alone was not enough. Preparation, adaptation, and cooperation with the land and its people were essential. Closing of Part 4. From the ruins of Roanoke emerged a new chapter in history. England had finally established a foothold in America, one that would endure. Yet the mystery of the lost colony remained, a haunting question mark on the map of history. Even as Jamestown flourished, every settler and explorer remembered. Somewhere along the coast of North Carolina, a village of English men, women, and children had disappeared without a trace. The whispers of Roanoke would echo forever. Mystery, legacy, and legend. For over 4 centuries, the story of Roanoke has fascinated historians, storytellers, and adventurers alike. Unlike Jamestown, which thrived and left records, Roanoke vanished almost entirely from history, leaving only whispers, rumors, and the haunting word CROATOAN. Even today, the disappearance of the colony remains one of the greatest mysteries in American history. Theories persist despite centuries of research. No single theory has been universally accepted. Scholars continue to debate the fate of the colonists. Integration with native tribes. Archaeological evidence suggests some settlers may have assimilated with local tribes, especially the CROATOAN. Artifacts resembling English origin have been found in native villages. The stories of fair-skinned children among the tribes lend weight to this theory. Famine and disease. The settlers may have slowly died from starvation, disease, or exposure. The harsh environment, combined with insufficient supplies from England, could have erased the colony without a trace. Violent attack. Some theorists suggest attacks by rival tribes or Spanish forces could have wiped out the colonists. Yet evidence is scant, leaving this as a possibility rather than proof. Relocation. Perhaps the colonists attempted to move inland, seeking fertile land or safer locations. Some archaeologists speculate that the fort hidden in the forests of North Carolina may have been such a site. Even with modern technology, archaeological digs, ground-penetrating radar, DNA analysis, the mystery endures. Every answer seems to raise more questions. Modern discoveries. In recent years, scientists and historians have tried to trace the lost colony using new methods. In 2012, researchers discovered clues in the soil and terrain of North Carolina suggesting small settlements existed beyond the known Roanoke site. English artifacts, including pottery fragments and tools, hint that survivors may have migrated inland or joined native communities. DNA studies of certain native tribes indicate possible intermingling with English settlers, although evidence is not definitive. Each discovery rekindles hope that one day the true fate of Roanoke might be revealed. The legend of Virginia. Dare among the many symbols of the lost colony, Virginia Dare holds a special place. She represents the innocence, hope, and potential of a new beginning that was tragically interrupted. Over time, her name became part of folklore, appearing in poems, stories, and songs. Some legends portray her as a figure of supernatural power, others as a symbol of the enduring human spirit. Whether she survived or perished, her story continues to captivate imaginations around the world. Lessons from Roanoke. Roanoke teaches us that history is not always a record of victories and success. Sometimes history is a puzzle, a question, or a warning. It reminds us of the harsh realities of exploration, the dangers of unknown lands, hostile climates, and unreliable supply lines. It illustrates the importance of preparation, leadership, and cooperation with local peoples, lessons later applied at Jamestown and other colonies. And it reveals how a single vanished community can echo across centuries, inspiring curiosity, study, and storytelling. Roanoke is a cautionary tale, but also a story of human ambition, courage, and hope. It shows us the fragile line between survival and disappearance, between history and legend. The enduring mystery. When we visit the coast of North Carolina today, the forests are thick and the beaches quiet. Yet if you listen closely, some say you can almost hear the laughter of children, the creak of wooden gates, and the voices of settlers long gone. The lost colony of Roanoke remains an enigma, a silent witness to the dreams of men, women, and children who dared to cross an ocean in search of a new life. Its story is a bridge between history and myth, a reminder that some mysteries are eternal. Roanoke will never truly be found, not entirely, but its legacy lives on, in history books, in legends, and in the imagination of every generation that wonders, what really happened to the lost colony? Closing words. As we leave the shores of Roanoke in our minds, we carry with us the memory of those settlers, their courage, their hope, and their silence. They crossed an ocean seeking a dream, and while the dream vanished, their story endures. The lost colony of Roanoke is more than a historical mystery. It is a tale of ambition, adventure, human frailty, and the eternal power of hope. And in that silence, in that single word carved into wood, CROATOAN, the world continues to listen, to wonder, and to imagine.